organizing and public service. After a number of campaigns, finally mustered up the courage to run for Los Angeles City Council, where I served for 7.5 years before joining the Senate for the last 7. But as I mentioned, I started off as a campaign organizer, so as I look to 2014, I look forward to making my case to you and the rest of the state of California to earn support for Secretary of State. Why? Because campaigns matter. I don't know about you, but as I was watching the November elections unfold last November, I saw what they were trying in Texas. I saw what they were trying in Florida. I saw what they were trying in Ohio and Wisconsin, trying to make it more difficult for working men and women to register and vote. Trying to make it more difficult for working men and women to actually cast a ballot. And that is absolutely wrong. The Secretary of State of any state is the chief elections officer. And we need to protect that opportunity to participate in our democracy. And while a lot of people may think, well, that would never happen in California, we're too rural a state. I ask you this. We seem to be pretty ambitious when it comes to our energy policy. California prides itself in its leadership when it comes to its worker protections and other areas of public policy, but we don't apply that same ambition when it comes to civic participation. And we need to. Why? Because elections matter. Again, this is California, we're not Texas, we're not Georgia, we're not some of these other states. But let me ask you, Democrats, what would we be living through right now if Prop 30 failed and Prop 32 passed? Elections matter. Ask our brothers and sisters in the building trades that are fighting these charter cities that are trying to sneak through charter amendments and special elections to undo project labor agreements and undermine prevailing wage. Elections matter. Deborah Bowen has served us fine for the last 7+ years as Secretary of State, but I look forward to being a Secretary of State that's more visible and more proactive and that will work more in partnership with Alameda County and every county throughout the state of California. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex Padilla. Senator, nice to have you with us. And another candidate, we have, I think, maybe 3 with us tonight that are candidates for Secretary of State. So former Common Cause Vice President, I believe Derek's here, Derek Chestnut. Derek.
Thank you, Alameda County Democrats, both for having me here tonight and for all your hard work that you do year in and year out to register voters, to get them out to vote, and give them the information that they need to make smart choices on Election Day. You know, I've been thinking about the news of the government shutdown over implementation of the Affordable Care Act, about how important implementation is, because we don't really change people's lives just by pushing bills through the legislature. In my 18 years working as a good government at Common Cause, I drafted legislation, I researched policy, but I spent a lot of time working on implementing things. And that's just as important in elections as it is in healthcare. So for example, the legislature passed in 2008 an online voter registration bill, but it didn't go into effect because the Secretary of State didn't have a statewide voter registration database in place to make that work. So we at Common Cause worked with county registrars, we worked with Secretary Bowen, we got another bill passed that Senator Leland Yee actually helped carry in the legislature, got that in place for the 2012 election, and it made a big difference. The bad news is we've got other policies that have already been passed but still aren't enacted. Things like same-day voter registration, things like pre-registration of high school students, things like expanded early voting. They're the same laws that Republicans in North Carolina have repealed to suppress the vote for political purposes that we don't have here in California because we haven't implemented them. So that's why we need our next Secretary of State to be someone who's truly dedicated to this office and these issues and has the expertise and said, gee, Derek, you're a nice guy, you know a lot about these issues, but you don't seem like a smooth, polished politician to run for statewide office. So I'll leave to you to decide which we need more, a smooth politician or an election scheme. Think about what's at stake. We are 49 or 48 when it comes to voter participation in California. We're either 43rd or 49th when it comes to per pupil spending from education, depending on how you measure that. Those stats are not a coincidence. When we have an electorate that is older, wealthier, whiter, more educated than our young people, we don't make smart choices when it comes to education. So that's why we need to fix our registration process. We need to get California's electorate looking like California's population. Now, the next thing that we need to do is give people better information when they vote. I want to take that voter's guide that the Secretary of State sends out in the mail and turn it into a digital app you can get on your smartphones. You can see a couple of online videos from every candidate instead of having to bore through that document. Well, if it looks like it, we'll keep it. But having good, simple, reliable, accurate information removes a barrier to voting for a lot of young people, and it gives candidates a way to get their message out on equal footing. And lastly, just to wrap up, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And too many people don't vote because they don't feel like their vote matters, like it doesn't count. Now, Deborah Bowen has done a great job making sure that our votes actually do count because of the physical equipment that we cast it on. But think about 2010, how hard it was to get people to vote because they didn't feel like their vote mattered. We showed up in 08 and voted for hope and change, and we got only a little change. We voted for the Affordable Care Act, we got that passed, but single-payer health care wasn't even on the table when Congress took up health care, even though that's what we voted for in 2008. California is a little bit better. We at least got a vote on single-payer health care, but it didn't pass. It died in the state Senate, and 6 Democrats weren't there to vote for it. And this is the power of big money, of corporate money, and it's not only poisoning our politics, it's keeping people from voting because they don't think their votes count. So we've got to stand up and push back on a Supreme Court that thinks money is speech and thinks that corporations are people. Anyone here think corporations are people? If you do, I'm not your guy. You should try to get Chevron to run. But if you want to stand up to these 5 ideological justices, if you want to see the executive branch and the legislative branch use their checks and balances and fix a Supreme Court that's out of control, I'm with you on that. As I remember, Bob Lankowski's here. He and I worked together on AB 644 to let the voters of California speak out about Citizens United. We've got measures like this passed already in San Francisco, in Richmond, in Los Angeles, and by 3-to-1 margins, voters have said, I want Congress to fix Citizens United. I'm Secretary of State. You can be damn sure I'll follow up and implement that and hold every member of Congress accountable so we know where they stand on whether money is speech and corporations are people. Thank you, Alameda Democrats, for all you do, and I look forward to talking to you throughout the campaign. Take care.
We have a third candidate who's looking for him. I know it's hard. The third candidate for Secretary of State, distinguished state senator from San Francisco, Leland Yee. Leland?
Thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to speak before you. You know, our democratic process right now in this country is under attack. Our democratic process right now in this country under attack. California absolutely must be that beacon of difference. Must be that beacon that says that we're not going to follow this country and we will set a different course. And that course is what is going to lead the rest of this country out of that darkness and how we can regain our democracy. Let me just kind of talk a little bit about what's been going on. Recently, the Supreme Court of these United States made a rather disappointing decision that says, guess what now? The Voting Rights Act, we don't need that anymore. Particularly where there is a provision that says that some of the states that has historically discriminated against certain population, that if you are going to do anything different, you really have to go to the federal government and seek changes within your state about whatever you're going to do. The Supreme Court says, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. Everything's hunky-dory. And guess what? States started to then say, well, you need to do voter ID. You need to have an identification before you come to a polling place so that we know, in fact, that you are qualified. And in other states, they said, well, you know, these early voting things and early voter registration, we don't have to do that. And so rather than opening up ways for individuals to cast their vote and participate in a democratic process, what those states did was just go the opposite way. And then on top of that, there were states that says that, well, you know, we don't maybe have that much money, and we don't need to open up that many polls. We don't have to facilitate anybody voting. And so what happened was that there were long lines. There were long, long lines. I don't know about you, but many of my friends are hourly workers. They are hourly workers. And every hour that they're not working, they don't get paid. They don't get money to put food on their family's table. They don't have money then to buy clothes for their children. And so if I am an hourly worker and I have to stand in long, long lines for 4 or 5 hours just so that I can vote, what does that mean? For some individuals that said, well, I guess that's part of life. But for many of my friends, and I know for many of your friends, what that means is that that's $40 or $50 that individual cannot bring home. $40 to $50 for a lot of hourly workers means the difference between whether or not that family is going to eat or not, and whether or not kids are going to have clothes on their back. And so that has been the reality of other parts of this country. And we decided that we were not going to do that. That we were going to move in a different direction. And so, in 2011, I authored SB 397. And last year, it was implemented. That was online voter registration. You no longer have to go to your Department of Election and sign up. You don't have to kind of go to a grocery store or a mall and then hope that someone out there wants to register you to vote and you sign up. But rather, you just simply go to your computer, your laptop, get on the internet, and you can register to vote. Because of that, 45 days before the election last November, we signed up nearly 800,000 new voters. 800,000 new voters. Because of that particular action on the part of the Secretary of State, because of my bill, we were able to beat back companies, corporate America's attempt to silence the voice of labor. We were able to then, for the first children will have a better chance at life by getting a little bit more money for public education. Those are the things that happened last November because of online voter registration. And at the last count that I heard, the Secretary of State now says that about 910,000 individuals have now registered to vote. And some would estimate that if you look at some of the counties that have taken a little bit more time to report that, nearly 1 million individuals have now registered to vote. What that means is that more individuals in one single action has been able to register to vote than any other effort that we have tried before. And so this state is leading in a way that is absolutely so significant that it is changing the political landscape of California. And that ought to be the way, because so many things that have happened in California stood out and saying, gee, California is in fact a state that recognizes the importance of the little person, the working person, the individual that really needs that helping hand. And so my job and my interest in government has always been to make it easier so that the little becomes more empowered. The disenfranchised become enfranchised. And those individuals without hope will have hope. As a little boy who came to this country when he was 3 years old, not knowing a word of English, living in a one-room apartment with my mother and with my sister, somehow we have to give every single little boy and little girl who comes to this country without any English, without any future, that hope. And that enfranchisement that we all have, that vote that we all have, is that opportunity. So I hope that you will continue to do whatever you can as Democrats to say to everyone in the state of California, we want to give you that hope. We want to give you that opportunity. And by golly, we will beat back whatever else is going on in this country. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
The personal stories of recent immigration to California or the United States that you've heard two of the three candidates today are, to me, really moving and part of the great strength of the Democrats.